Tom Aspinall, UFC heavyweight champion, has once again addressed the rumors about a possible transition to boxing. The subject gained momentum after his father, Andy Aspinall, began publicly supporting the idea that his son should step into the boxing ring in search of a huge financial windfall. Aspinall, who spent part of his youth training alongside the legendary Tyson Fury, already has a brief background in professional boxing. He actually had one fight before committing exclusively to MMA in 2017. Now, with the current market, buzz and astronomical figures being reported, such as the supposed $200 million pocketed by Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford in a single bout, the topic has resurfaced with even greater intensity. Even so, the English champion made it clear that now is not the time to seriously consider such a change. He stressed that his priority remains the octagon and that there are still important challenges to overcome in the UFC before entertaining a new path. Open quote, "Not now, to be honest. If I get to a point where I've cleaned out the division and there's no one left to face, maybe I'll look into it." Close quote. Aspinall recognizes that the sums involved in boxing are extremely tempting, but he doesn't want to be tied down solely to the financial side of the debate. For him, the most important thing is how these gains ultimately fuel the entire combat sports scene. Check out what he said about it. Open quote, "I think whenever combat sports in general are doing well, that's good for everybody. I like it. If we could all get paid better, not that I'm doing bad with the UFC, but if we're talking $100 million, that's a lot of money. So I think it's good for everybody. Not just me. It's good for the whole combat sports scene." Close quote. While the son shows caution, the father, Andy Aspinall, sees boxing as an opportunity to ensure that his son is properly compensated for his talent. Andy, who has been training Tom since childhood, believes that MMA fighters deserve a much larger slice of the profits, since UFC purses are still far from boxing's gigantic numbers. In a recent interview, he didn't hide his wish to see his son chase a multi-million-dollar super fight. Open quote, "I'd love for him to have a very well-paid boxing match for the money. The money is there, and I don't see why someone as talented as Tom shouldn't get a piece of it when boxers are making 100 times more than 100 times more. The UFC isn't paying that kind of money. If they did, great, and he could earn well, but I think that 1% of people who are really good should be paid better." Close quote. With such different statements, it's clear that while Andy is already thinking about securing his son's financial future with a super fight in the ring, Tom prefers to keep his focus on the present and on the immediate challenge, his title defense against Cyril Gane at UFC 321 on October 25th. The big question that remains is, in the not-so-distant future, will we actually see the UFC heavyweight champion cross over to boxing in pursuit of a super payday? Dana White, president of the UFC, recently surprised many by hinting at the possibility that one of the biggest names in MMA journalism might regain access to UFC events, nearly a decade after being banned. The UFC boss has never hidden his explosive temper or his bluntness when dealing with situations that irritate him. Over the years, he's been at the center of public clashes, like his famous outbursts at Chael Sonnen and Wanderlei Silva after their iconic brawl on The Ultimate Fighter. But in 2016, his anger was directed at a journalist who, according to him, had crossed an important line. The result was an immediate ban from all UFC events. That journalist was Ariel Helwani, one of the most respected and decorated reporters in MMA history. Helwani has won the MMA Journalist of the Year award from Fighters Only every single year since 2010. But that didn't shield him from clashing with Dana White. The breaking point came when Helwani leaked information the UFC had wanted to keep secret. Brock Lesnar's return at UFC 200 and the rematch between Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz at UFC 202. For Dana, that was a betrayal of trust and unforgivable at the time. Now, nearly 10 years later, the situation might be shifting. During an appearance on the Impulsive podcast, hosted by Logan Paul, Dana White gave hints that he might be open to revisiting the situation. During the conversation, the UFC president asked how Ariel Helwani was doing. Open quote, "How's he doing?" Dana asked. Logan Paul replied immediately, "He's upset that his relationship with the UFC is the way it is." Close quote. Dana White then opened up, showing that despite the differences, he also feels the weight of the distance. Open quote, "I'm upset about it too. Maybe we should resolve this. "We probably should all get back together again." Close quote. These statements don't officially end the ban, but they make it clear that there's now an opening for reconciliation between Dana White and Ariel Helwani. If that happens, it would mark an important milestone. Since Helwani is one of the most influential figures in MMA media, and his return to UFC events could symbolize not only reconciliation, but also a new phase in the relationship between the promotion and the press. Tom Aspinall is about to make his first heavyweight title defense against Cyril Gane on October 25th at UFC 321. The English champion is riding high in his career, especially after his lightning-fast knockout of Curtis Blaydes in just 60 seconds at UFC 304 in July 2024. Following that triumph, he spent an undesired period away from the octagon. But now, with his return set, the fighter has made it clear that his wish is to compete as much as possible in 2025. One advantage Aspinall has over other champions is that, being a heavyweight, he doesn't have to deal with draining weight cuts, which makes quick turnarounds more feasible. The idea of fighting twice next year excites the Englishman, though he admits that scheduling could get in the way. After his clash with Gane in October, there will only be 2 numbered pay-per-view events left in 2025, and competition for main event slots will be fierce, as other champions also seek the spotlight. On this subject, Aspinall explained his perspective quite directly. Open quote, "I would like to, yes, but the thing is, getting the UFC support for it. They've got other pay-per-view champions who want to headline cards. If I can squeeze in another fight this year, I'll do it. If not, it'll be as early as possible next year." Close quote. Beyond his fight schedule, Aspinall also analyzed his next opponent, Cyril Gane. The Frenchman is known for his striking technique, but has already shown vulnerabilities when taken down. That was evident at UFC 270 in January 2022, when Francis Ngannou surprised everyone by controlling the fight with wrestling. It happened again in March 2023 at UFC 285, when Jon Jones needed just 124 seconds to submit Gane after easily dragging him to the mat. Despite this history, Aspinall doesn't believe that relying solely on grappling is the simplest route to victory. He prefers to keep an open mind to all possible scenarios inside the octagon. Check out what the champion said. Open quote, "It's an MMA fight, so anything can happen. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to take me down. It's MMA. I'm preparing for everything. I train with world-class guys in every area. I'm comfortable anywhere, and I'll choose the path of least resistance, wherever it is on fight night. We've seen that Cyril has holes in his ground game, but he's evolved. Situations like that force you to improve. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a lot of grappling exchanges this time, and I also wouldn't be surprised if it was a stand-up fight from start to finish. You have to be ready for everything in MMA, and I'm preparing for everything." Close quote. The Englishman makes it clear that he's ready for any kind of battle against Gane, whether striking or grappling. Now the question is whether he'll truly be able to fulfill his desire of staying active in 2025 with 2 fights, something that depends more on UFC's scheduling than his own will. Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes share a backstory that is now more relevant than ever, with their potential UFC showdown looking increasingly close to reality. In June of this year, at UFC 316, Harrison cemented her superstar status by capturing the UFC bantamweight title, submitting Juliana Pena in the second round. Right after her victory, she was surprised by Amanda Nunes stepping into the octagon, a stare-down that made it crystal clear who would be next in line for the belt. The anticipation is huge, particularly because the UFC is planning a historic event at the White House in 2026, and Harrison, currently the only American champion, is the natural choice to headline that spectacle. With Nunes back in USADA's testing pool since the beginning of the year, negotiations for the super fight have already officially begun. Beyond the technical greatness of both fighters, the bout carries extra weight because of their past relationship. Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes were once training partners at American Top Team, and although they never trained together extensively, they did share sparring sessions. In a recent interview, Harrison opened up about how that first contact with the Brazilian went, back before she had even debuted in MMA. On the subject, the champion said, open quote, "She's one of the main reasons I moved to Florida. I had already tested out several different gyms, and when I got there, I met Mike Brown. On my second day at ATT, they put me in sparring with Amanda and I was like, holy yeah. On my second day, I was already training with her. I don't know what they were thinking. It was kind of risky, but okay. I hadn't even had my first MMA fight yet. Our paths didn't cross much in training because she was already on another level, doing a lot of private, individual work. But I always made myself available. We trained a bit, but not a lot, which to me was a shame. Close quote. Their meeting inside the octagon is projected for early 2026, possibly even before the historic White House card. For Kayla Harrison, defeating Amanda Nunes, considered by many to be the greatest female MMA fighter of all time, would be an unquestionable milestone in her career. Still, anyone who thinks that fight would mark the end of her journey in the sport is mistaken. Asked about the possibility of retiring after the bout, Harrison was firm in her response, making it clear she still has plans. Open quote, "No, I wouldn't retire. I've got some ideas, but it's step by step, one thing at a time. If everything goes as planned, I think it's going to be great. I'm very excited about the future. I need to put my work boots on, train hard and beat Amanda. When I do that, I think a lot of opportunities will come my way." Close quote. The rivalry between Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes promises to be one of the biggest in UFC history. Not just because of its sporting magnitude, but also for the symbolism it carries. On one side, the current American champion seeking to cement her era. On the other, the Brazilian who has already written her name as the female MMA ghost, and now may once again prove she still has what it takes for the biggest challenges. Merab Dvalishvili is about to live one of the most important moments of his career. The UFC bantamweight champion, the Machine, is preparing to defend his title for the third time, this time against Corey Sandhagen, in the co-main event of UFC 320. On October 4th in Las Vegas, the card will also feature a headliner, the rematch between Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira for the light heavyweight belt. Dvalishvili arrives with momentum after scoring his first submission in 4 years, when he tapped Sean O'Malley in the third round of UFC 316. That win further cemented his reputation as one of the toughest fighters to face in the division, thanks to his relentless wrestling pressure, seemingly endless cardio, and iron willpower. But according to his coach, the public still hasn't seen the best of Merab. For a long time, the Georgian was criticized for stacking up too many decision wins and relying heavily on relentless takedowns. That strategy proved extremely effective. But after his submission win over O'Malley, Dvalishvili appears to be evolving into a more aggressive, dangerous fighter. His coach highlighted this transformation with excitement. "This guy is unstoppable in training. I can't even express or explain how much he's improved and how much he keeps growing in this camp. It's jaw-dropping. Everybody in the gym is talking about him. Everyone says, 'Oh my God, where did this version of him come from?'" This is Merab believing in himself in a whole new way now. He's not just the guy who will take you down 1,000 times. Now he wants to hurt you. He wants to finish. He wants to create devastating, thrilling fights. I think you're going to see a completely different Merab in this fight. Someone brutal and even more exciting to watch. This evolution may be crucial, as Sandhagen is a very tough opponent. The American has only been submitted once in his career, and that was by former champion and Dvalishvili's teammate, Aljamain Sterling. Still, the Georgian hasn't scored a knockout since 2021, when he defeated Marlon Moraes by TKO in a war at UFC 266. Despite his grappling-heavy style and suffocating pace, Dvalishvili has already shown in the past that he can also knock opponents out. His entry into the MMA spotlight back in 2017 came with a lightning-quick knockout in just 15 seconds over Raufeon Stotts, the former Bellator champion, with a spectacular spinning back fist. Now, against Sandhagen, the question is whether the new Merab will truly show up inside the octagon. If his coach's words hold true, the champion may be ready not only to defend his belt, but also to mark a new era in his career. More violent, more thrilling, and even more devastating.